Hi, everyone. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the LD topic. And the last time I was talking a little bit more about biopolitics. And so thinking a little bit about, I guess, how, medicine or, sort of exist as a sort of biopolitical thing. Obviously we want to think about how medicine, is connected to, obviously things like the prison industrial complex. We obviously think about how medicine is connected to obviously disasters and obviously risk, and so thinking more about how I guess how medicine, operates as one of those things will help us understand how the development of medicine we can sort of trace those things to obviously urban space. And so earlier I was talking, I guess, a little bit about the rationalization of, risk management. And so I guess we can spend a little bit of time talking about risk because obviously, the association of risk, comes with intellectual property protections because obviously they're attempting to, provide a fail safe against the laws or the legal mechanisms that they attempt to enact. And also on top of that they're attempting to provide an association or an evaluation of risk in order to that might be preserved by interfering or introducing a new law or introducing a update or new amendment to a particular law. And so obviously when I was talking earlier about the management of risk, I was thinking about biopolitics, right? And so if we're thinking about biopolitics, we kind of want to think about the management of risk is sort of individualized, right? It's individualized because the sort of subject of biopolitics attempts to sort of regulate the self, right? If we think about biopolitics in terms of regulation and sort of how power operates, it's like it works in order to in order to make sure that what you would give up for the security of your health extends past what it would normally what it normally would. And so thinking about the way the empire attempts to produce infrastructure updates and to produce new mechanisms on health, all of those things, all that development establishes just trust within the regulation mechanisms of the government. But at the same time what it does is it allows certain perspectives to sort of be privileged over certain marginalized groups, right? And that's why the global south is obviously vulnerable in the status quo because obviously governments are obviously attempting to try and capitalize on the threat of water shortages or trying to capitalize on the threat of thinking about how relocation and the removal of certain things exist alongside networks of violence is how racial capitalism produces the need for technological innovation, for power, for economic growth, all of those things, the desires that the community wants, right? All of those things are an extension of the nation state. And so the reason why that's important is because when you think about whether or not, when you think about the World Trade Organization, right? When you think about urban gentrification, when you think about the rapid increase in property prices, you think about all the things that exist in order to displace certain bodies, there's a certain relationship that exists between not only the developmental process, but thinking about how development is coextensive with displacement, right? And that's kind of where you want to sort of start thinking about the approach of, taking a critical approach to the topic, right? Because the topic is attempting to only associate itself with, regulating and justifying the existence of the WTO, but it is willing to talk about the way that the WTO produces, a smooth functioning of governance, and why that governance reproduces, violent, enclaves of territorialization, right, and spatial violence and environmental violence, right. And so thinking about the sort of way that all of those things are tied up with amongst with each other is sort of why the resolution itself is obviously a privileging a particular type of interest, right? Its interest in preserving the political structure and the political economy of the World Trade Organization by justifying its protections over certain medicinal rights, is exactly what is what you kind of want to critique. And that's kind of why colonialism is not purely at the regulation of bodies in direct contact, but it is the indirect regulation of those bodies through biopolitical technologies. And so I would be thinking a little bit about how colonialism is replicated through those things, how modeling off of the United States reproduces those inequalities, right, and create certain dominant pathways for those pathways to sort of continue. And why thinking about the topic on a global level, thinking about why this sort of provides it strengthens the political alliance that the US has with other global elites, right, at the cost of affecting the global south. And so thinking about why those actors, those organizations sort of combining and thinking, sort of coalescing on certain protections over medicines, thinking about why that political discourse still presents a certain problem and violent solution to an even worse problem, which is that there's already violent sentiment happening when people are attempting to provide adequate health to certain bodies. And so thinking about how that affects the value to life of those bodies is basically what biopolitics is attempting to get at. And we will, in the next debate, go in a little bit deeper about environmentalism, environmental racism as a problem, and thinking a little bit about how intellectual protections over COVID, are an extension of the WTO. Thank you.